Cool, does everyone see that all right?
Brilliant.
Great. So thanks for joining us again today. It's been a little while since we've seen you because we were on leave last show and tell. This is show and tell 13 for the community work. So we are going to today be talking about commonalities across the communities that we've been working in. So there's a few new faces on the call today, so we just wanted to give a reminder of what we're working on as a team. So we're looking at how the Red Cross can become more community-led and therefore more relevant and present in local communities. And we've been doing this by engaging and understanding the strengths and needs of communities in high-risk, low-resource places. Again, as a reminder of where we're working, so we've got 3 communities that we've been doing research in so far. So we've got Camborne in Cornwall, Neath in South Wales, and Nelson in Lancashire. So as a reminder for always, this is a conversation. If you do have any questions at all or any thoughts, please feel free to put them in the chat. We should have plenty of time at the end to answer them. So we finished the kind of research and learning phase of the discovery. And for the last couple of weeks, we've been synthesizing. Now, I'm sure a few of you are thinking, what does synthesis even mean? Sorry. So we've broken it down. So across the 3 towns, we've carried out 75 in-depth interviews. We've sent out 10 community activity boxes in the post. We've organised 9 community events across the 3 towns, and each of our local innovation officers have also been doing asset-based community mapping. And that has given us 1,845 observations and quotes, which we've synthesized down into 386 insights, and again, grouping that again into 96 findings, and we're not done yet. We're still synthesizing at the moment. We wanted to share with you we're going along. So in case you're more of a visual person and those numbers were a little bit overwhelming, what you can see on the left-hand side is what we look like when interviews first get brought into their observations and quotes. And then in the middle, you can see we start to group these in affinity mappings. We start to look for similar cards and understanding how often we're hearing this insight, and that makes those black cards. And then what we'll be doing this week is bringing those together again, really looking at what these insights have told us and what we're finding. And that's what you can see in those grey and white cards at the top. So as you can see, we've learned a lot about the communities in Neath, Nelson and Camborne, and it's been really fascinating to explore which of these insights are the really hyper-local ones and really specific to each of the towns, and which of the insights that are being repeated across all 3. So today, Bethan and I are going to take the time to talk you through 2 of the common findings or 2 of the commonalities. So the first common finding is that communities want spaces to come together for activities and opportunities. We've heard this repeatedly in really different forms across the communities. So for some people, they want to have a safe space that with multiple generations can use together. For some, it's they want to have a space they can have use for activities with friends. Or for some, it's the opportunity to just bump into someone and meet someone new locally. We've also heard it from more of a service offering. So some of the more vulnerable individuals we've been speaking to have expressed how time consuming and often inaccessible it can be to manage multiple appointments from the same service providers who are supporting them. And so they were saying how if we united these services under one roof, it would be really beneficial to their quality of life. A single mum in Camborne shared with us, I think there should be more coffee mornings, places to go that involve crafts, things for different ages and things that involve the community. A single mother she also just moved to Camborne just before the pandemic. And as someone in her previous community that was really active and really involved, she was really struggling to find places that she could kind of be in that community space and work out where she could not only get support, but also offer it as well. Ultimately, people are looking for a reason to come together. It is, however, important to acknowledge that these community spaces do exist, but they're not meeting the needs of the community. And we say that because we've heard so often about the fact that people want them, but we're also seeing how regularly they're already existing. Most of these spaces seem to kind of offer very specific needs and specific groups. So, for example, a lunch club for retirees or an after school club from 4 till 5, but there's never an opportunity to bring these communities together. And it doesn't provide the environment for action and change, because we have heard when you bring all these different diverse communities together, we have so many examples of when community spaces have catalyzed change and local action. Sure Start in Camborne is one of them. So There's actually a service that's ended a number of years ago now, but it's been mentioned to us countless times during our research with a bittersweet tone. It's part of the national initiative I'm sure many of you might have seen before, where families can go to come together, get training, and also just have that safe space. The parents we spoke to, whose children are now adults themselves, expressed how crucial this service was when they were young parents in connecting the community. And actually now, since it's ended, how disengaged they've become within the community. So and these connections not only worked within Sure Start, but they also inspired new community groups and support as the families grew up. And without this service, there's been a massive gap in the Camborne community. I'm gonna hand over to Bethan to talk through the second common finding.
Thank you, Charlotte. So the second commonality that we've recognised across the 3 towns are some of the barriers that prevent people from seeking support that they may actually really need. Pride is certainly one of these barriers. Individuals explained that it is pride that stands in their way when they are looking to ask for support, and that they may get embarrassed to actually reach out for support also. It's clear also that there is still a stigma around mental health, and that people would find it easier to overcome this pride barrier to seek physical support rather than mental support. Some have also said that they feel there may be consequences for asking for support. One lady specifically explained that she feared her children would be taken off her if she appeared to be unstable. What we've learned is that people don't like to be seen asking for help. It's their pride that makes them look weak. A local business owner in Nice said, "I try to be self-sufficient, which is what would hold me back. Also, not knowing where to go." As you know, we've mentioned time and time again that if you don't know where to go for support, then you really don't know. And that's mentioned again in the quote that you can see on the screen now. Something else that we've seen really clearly across all 3 areas is the prevalence of homelessness and substance misuse that is also very visible within the town. We don't, however, have deep insights into this area, and we recognise it is a gap within our research. Here are a few reasons that we feel that this may be a gap. We would really have liked the opportunity to speak with those currently living on the streets, but with COVID restrictions, this proved to be very, very difficult. We repeatedly tried to contact with local organisations who support these individuals, but unfortunately, we were unable to do so. We're also aware that if we were to speak to individuals who are classed as vulnerable, then it would take time to build relationship, a good rapport, but most importantly, trust. And I'm going to hand back over to Charlotte now, who's going to explain to you further of where we're going to go from here.
So thanks, Bethan. So as I said, we are just finishing the synthesis phase at the moment. So what we're going to be doing next is going to be mapping what we've learned, understanding how these problems and insights we're seeing are codependent and the correlations between them, and prioritizing the direction of our work with the communities. It's important to acknowledge, as Bethan was saying, not only what we have learned, but also what we haven't as we're doing this mapping to really help us understand the interlinking and codependent aspects of the community. An example of kind of what we mean by that is, for example, we've heard a lot about youth crime, but we've also heard from the young people how limited the opportunities are and the lack of places for them to go safely. Now we know that those seem very interlinked, but also what other factors are at play into that domino effect into the ecosystem of the community. That's what we're going to be mapping next. And we're really excited to share with you again soon. So that's all for us today. Is there any questions or thoughts at all?
I've got a question. What are you going to do if, what's your plans if there's kind of already stuff in the local areas? Are you going to team up with them?
Yeah, so we're really keen. So not only is it part of our strategy in terms of the partnering and convening side, but equally it's really important that we don't, the local organizations are the ones that have the valuable relationships already in place. And we don't want to kind of use our big red feet and stamp on them. So we want to make sure that we're kind of fitting in seamlessly and working out what's existing and where we fit into that space. And that's why I want to spend all this time really understanding those kind of codependent relationships so that we don't step into a space that we don't fully understand.
Cool.
Just thanks for sharing. You mentioned about trust as one of the kind of highlight gap. Just wondering, sorry.
You're fine.
Just wondering by sorry about the beep. Just wondering, by doing this piece, like engaging with them, do you think it has like helped build that trust between them and the community and Red Cross, or has there always been quite good level of trust between the community and Red Cross?
So this is where it varies depending on town, and it's less kind of cohesive. So I think and what I mean by that is, in Nelson there's never really been a Red Cross presence. In Neath there used to be a really strong Red Cross presence, but a lot of the services have ended. And in Camborne there's currently Red Cross presence still. So what we've noticed is when we went to speak to Camborne Council, they were like, we love what you do, thanks for coming in, we know what you do, and we refer to you really often. So there's already that trust, they can see the change. In Neath, we actually had some people talk to us who were like, I used to get involved with you, I don't know what you do now, so can you tell me? So there's like a little bit of like we might trust you, we think we have trusted you before, but we haven't seen you in a while, so what are you about? And in Nelson, there's a lot, we've got to do a lot more to build that trust. Equally in Nelson, Nelson's a very divided and diverse community. So there's a lot of people working in social cohesion charities in the area. So I think that's wider than a Red Cross problem. I think that's like something that the whole community are tackling. One thing I think is really important is that all three of these towns have had communities or researchers come in and then leave. So something we've been really keen is to build that trust throughout the research and constantly offer our knowledge back into the community and make sure we're constantly not being information gatekeepers and holding information, we're constantly sharing back in. So I'd say we're not yet trusted, but we're also, it depends on the community to see quite how far we are from that point.
Thank you.
No worries. Got one more minute if anyone has any burning questions before Jess will move us on. All good? Well, if you do have any other questions at all, feel free to shoot any of us an email, or we've got the community@redcross.org.uk email as well if you can't remember our personal emails at all. But thank you so much for listening.
Great, thanks guys, that was super interesting and great to hear where you've got to. So next we're going to pass over to Phil, who's going to be talking to us about passwords versus passphrases. So over to you, Phil.
So it's a really, really complicated topic. And I'm going to talk about a few concepts that if we just talk about passwords, it's going to be really confusing. So I thought, like, how can we get into this topic? I'll share my screen. There we go. So I thought we'd start by talking about ice cream, something that everyone knows about, hopefully. And I've chosen 3 common flavors, vanilla, mint, and strawberry. Now, if you have an ice cream and you have vanilla on the top, mint in the middle, strawberry on the bottom, that is a combination of 3 flavors. But if I was to say it's different, if you had, I don't know, mint on the top, vanilla in the middle, strawberry on the bottom, then that's a different permutation. It's still the same combination of those 3 flavors, but the permutation is different. And actually, we can start rearranging those flavor combinations to give us lots of variance, even though it's only 3 flavors. And I've not gone with all vanilla or 2 mint, 1 vanilla. And really what we've got here is this kind of idea of mixing things up. Obviously, we can do it with words as well. So God and dog mean 2 different things, but it's the same letters. And really, it's this idea of permutations and the number of ways that we can arrange something. Now, what I'm looking at doing, and this is a big jump here, so some of you might not make it, conscious of that, hopefully everyone will, is I'm saying, well, why don't we increase the number of scoops, as well as we can look at the number of flavors. Now, in my analogy, and with a password, the flavors of mint, vanilla, and strawberry, well, they represent our uppercase characters, our lowercase characters, and our numbers in our passwords. We don't really have many more flavors that we can introduce. It makes it quite complicated that we've already got quite a lot of flavor going on there. But if we increase the number of scoops, the length of the password, actually we're increasing that number of permutations really, really by significant factors. And you might be thinking, that's going to make it harder. What does this all mean? Well, actually, by increasing that entropy, or that number of permutations, we've been able to get some benefits, and I'll talk about those in a second. Now, there's this great cartoon. I think it's so funny in loads of different ways because I'm a geek. Now, what it talks about, that top row says that this is the kind of thing that we've been training out for years. If you pick a word, you substitute some letters. So here they've got troubadour, they've put a 0 rather than an O, they've put a 4 rather than an A, and then they've put a suffix on the end. And I imagine that quite a lot of us have passwords that look like that. It's gobbledygook. It's not really easy to remember. It's not really easy to type. You've got to think like, what did I substitute? What's this? What's that? And as a result, it's quite a difficult thing to use. But it's really small. So from a computer point of view, it's very easy for it to guess. There's not enough scoops. There's quite a lot of different flavors, but there's not a lot of entropy. And in fact, this time here, it shows that we can guess that password in about 3 days. Now, if we can guess a password in a short period of time, that means we need to change a password. Now, I can't see everyone, but kind of hypothetically, hands up if you get really irritated by your password expiring and having to change it every 50 days, every 90 days. You have to change it because we're using a short password that someone can break. And we're having to change it quickly, hopefully sooner than they're able to break it. So we've spent all this time training ourselves to make passwords that are really easy for a computer to guess, but really hard for us to use. And what I'm looking to do is do things the other way around. I want it to be easy for us. I want to stop expiring passwords, and I want it to be hard for computers to guess. And what I'm suggesting, as the bottom line indicates, is let's use some random words. And if we use random words, we don't need uppercase, we don't need numbers, we don't need punctuation. We can just use random words because our permutations, the number of scoops that we've got, is too difficult to guess. In this specific example, 550 years it would take to guess that password. And that's good enough for me. I'm not going to be around for that long. My password might be, someone might break it, but they won't be able to access anything that's really of any use. 4 random words or a sentence. So I have 9 black cats, full stop. That's a really long, complicated password, but you've all remembered it. You all know what that is now. You'll remember it tomorrow. You'll think, oh, that guy Phil, he had that password of I have 9 black cats, full stop. It's really easy to type. You get into a bit of a habit with it. And because it's so long, we don't need to expire it. So I'm proposing that we move to longer passwords of 16 characters without complexity. Now, the example here is any random words. Now that is 16 characters. I know the kind of initial mindset is, oh, I'm never going to remember this, but you're only going to use one password, and you're just going to use that one password for years. It doesn't matter anymore. It's not that you have to change it every 90 days and what was my new password and what was my old password and what did I change on the end, that you'll be so familiar with as one password that we can move away from that kind of problem that we've built for ourselves. In terms of how I'm going to do it, we're going to do it slowly. We're going to start with education and comms. So tell people, let's use longer passphrases. My passphrase since I've joined BRC has been a minimum of 26 letters, and that's not just typing out the alphabet. So I know it works. It works with our systems. It works really well, and it's really easy when you sort of change your mindset. We spent a long time programming people, so to kind of change that programming is going to take a bit of time. So we're going to have a soft lead in, then we're going to start looking at that password expiration. So as people change their password the next time, they'll move to a longer passphrase. And then we'll start the enforcement. So when people have all moved across, so we'll have nearly 4 months to get used to this change, then we'll have the system just allowing complex passwords. And because, as I mentioned, because we've got that long password, we don't need to be expiring it anymore. We don't need to be changing it. And there's a number of reasons why that's a really bad thing already, just on its own. That if someone got your password today and you change your password in 90 days, actually, this is the kind of craziness that someone that's stolen a password generally uses it immediately, not in 90 days. If they're trying to break a password, well, we're taking it beyond that point that's feasible anyway. The other kind of thing that I will just call out before anyone asks me the question, can you write your password down? Yes, but not the whole password. Write down 3 words of your password. Remember the last bit. It's very unlikely that you're going to have a domestic burglary, someone steals your password to get your BRC credentials and log in. It's more likely that it will be compromised from another system. So write it down, use something that you can really remember what it is. Make it easy for you, but hard for the computer to guess. And just to prove that I'm not kind of making this up, NCSC back in 2018 endorsed this approach. UK government initiative of Get Safe Online, they're also advising this, and the US FTC. That's what we're going to look at. You've had a bit of a sneak preview. Mike and Dorothy have not seen this yet. Are there any questions? Yes, there are some questions coming in. Multiple BRC applications. We're going to apply this to when you log into BRC, so Active Directory, when you log into your laptop, for instance. Can you use the same password for multiple things? Yeah, as it's long, it's not going to be broken. We can use it in multiple places. I'd rather that we use only in the context of BRC, and we are working to move everything to single sign-on. So Savvy was one that BRC people know, that you had to have this ridiculous thing where you had a different login, a different password, and they weren't in sync, and I could never remember mine, so I just got the browser to remember it for me. But why isn't I just log in once, one set of credentials that I remember, one strong set of credentials? And it's then really easy for you to manage, it's easy for me to manage. So no more special characters, no. No, you could create a password of 16 special characters if you wanted. It'd be really hard to remember, but you don't need to. Will it include Citrix? Yeah, Citrix logs in using Active Directory. People can change it now. We'll just bring you into that cycle. If you do change it today, there is a chance that you might have to reset it once before you then move on to that long passphrase. But you just need to choose a new sentence or a new set of words. It's not as hard as that kind of big change. And the benefits that we'll get from this and when we're running. I'm also looking at the kind of how can we prove that someone has done the change so that we don't have to kind of reset those. This is going to be life-changing. It is, you know, of just getting away from those kind of really bad, nice Adam, getting away from those really bad habits and use this everywhere. I definitely advise you to do it. Really simple thing for choosing your passphrases is why don't you just come up with one, and why don't you stick something on the end that you know that's specific to that site. So I want a green Caterham, full stop, Facebook on the end, and I've got a unique password for Facebook. If I put Gmail on the end, it's a unique password now for Gmail, and it's really long, it's really secure. And we don't need to worry that someone's going to break the system, because that isn't really the way it works. Did you say single sign-on is imminent? I say that we're looking at it and we're working on it. The first thing that we're going to do is really look at how we provision users and make the onboarding experience better. as well as when we terminate. At the moment, there's too many kind of manual processes and people having to do this, that, and the other. We've got one version of the truth. We should just reflect that in all of our systems, and then we change it once, and then it replicates. That's what we're going to tackle first, so that we don't have issues where, say, a terminated user can log into an application once they've left. But single sign-on and rolling that out, it's quite a complicated thing, and we're always trying to push to make sure that we get single sign-on. But yeah, we've got a backlog of things that we need to tackle. Any other questions?
So there's another one there about how this approach compares to a password manager.
Yeah. So I've tried using a password manager myself. I don't really get on with them because I've got my kind of BRC account and I need to log into different things there. I've got my personal phone, I've got my work phone, I've got my personal laptop, and my password manager doesn't really work well across them all. And if I can't access my password manager, then I can't get into like my bank account, for instance. And it generates really long, really complex passwords that are stronger than I'm talking about. But the difference is kind of, it's computationally infeasible already, as in it's not worth the time of a computer trying to guess it. It's just too hard. It's not going to be broken. So yes, it is stronger, but not in a way that anyone will notice. And I find the usability of a password safe or a password manager quite tricky. We are going to roll one out for people that do have to log into multiple applications and that aren't hooked into single sign-on. So we'll make that experience a bit better. And by doing that, you can log into one portal and that password manager will then log you in automatically into the different applications that you need to get to and simplify that experience. Cool.
Thanks very much, Phil. We've got 2 more minutes if anyone has any last questions. Otherwise we'll...
No one asked when are we going to get rid of one login?
Cool, great. Well, thanks very much, Phil. That was super interesting and definitely something that I'm going to start looking at doing ASAP. So finally, our last show and tell for today is from Fiona, who's going to be talking to us about how we've been supporting the Eswatini Red Cross. So over to you, Fiona.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Jess. So yeah, I'm going to talk today about the work we've done supporting the Eswatini Red Cross. I'm just going to chuck the links in the chat in advance because I'm the last person to speak. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you all see that? Oh, can you see the, which version can you see? Can you see the half and half version?
We've got the presenter view.
We've got the presenter view, yeah, I thought you might, there you go. Okay, so yeah, my name is Fiona. I'm from the GIS and Information Management team. That stands for Geographic Information Systems and Information Management, and our role is to advise and support all areas of operations with their geographic data needs for humanitarian response. I've put the link to our Red Room and Stream channel in the chat already for you to have a look at. So firstly, just to tell you a little bit about the Eswatini Red Cross. Eswatini is a small country in southern Africa, which is between South Africa and Mozambique. It used to be called Swaziland, however it did revert to its original name of Eswatini in 2018. And there has been a relationship between the BRC and Eswatini since 2019. So the challenge that we had is the Eswatini Red Cross are running the Salele Health Clinic, where there are a program and a new project being implemented at the moment. And the project aim is the strengthened resilience of girls and their families through improved water, sanitation and hygiene, WASH, menstrual hygiene management and nutritional security initiatives. So as part of the project planning stage, the Eswatini Red Cross needed to better understand the levels of knowledge, attitudes and practices, known as CAP, towards nutrition in the catchment area for that health clinic. And that included infant and young child feeding levels. So we wanted to be able to calculate some metrics so that we could assess child health levels on the whole. So the solution to this was a few steps. Back in October last year, we did some training in smart survey design for mobile data collection using a tool called Kobo Toolbox. The survey was then collected with child guardians, which in most cases were parents, in December of last year. You can see an example in the image there, but that isn't from this project, that is a stock image. And after that, we did some data visualization of the survey results in February, and soon we're going to be doing some training in how we did that for the East Swatini Red Cross staff so that they can replicate this going forwards. However, you're probably thinking, what on earth does all that mean and what did we actually do? I'm going to take you through it step by step. So smart survey design for mobile data collection, what that means is turning your survey, your survey that you might have drafted in Word, into an online digital tool through Kobo Toolbox to digitize it. And by using Kobo Toolbox, it means that it's available offline and it can be, the answers can be gathered to your survey through mobile devices. You can take that mobile phone out into the absolute middle of nowhere where there's no mobile phone signal, complete the survey with people that you want to ask the questions to, and then when you come back into a Wi-Fi zone later, it will upload. The reason for using a tool like this is that you can inbuild survey logic. There's a couple of examples there, relevance and constraints. So a relevant question would mean that you can only ask a question to somebody if it's relevant to them. For example, you would only ask a female if they are currently pregnant or breastfeeding. That question wouldn't be asked to anyone that has already told you that they are male. And the reason for doing all of this is because on average, the more time spent on survey design equals 4 times the gain when it comes to data cleaning and analysis. So if you spend 1 hour on good survey design, that will save you about 4 hours in data cleaning and analysis after you've gathered your survey responses. However, the big caveat with this is that Kobo is just the tool. It's not the solution to a good survey. I've written a blog post recently, and I've put the link there for you about what you need to do to write a good survey. And it's all about the questions that you ask. And if you're asking the right questions, that will get you, that will help you to solve the problem that you're trying to understand. So there was lots of learning from both this project and other projects on some of the survey questions which worked really well as intended, and some where they could have improved the style of the question. So yeah, the example there, one of the questions in the survey was around the type of nutrition and vitamin content that a child has eaten. And we found that even though kind of the standard nutrition surveys will have questions that say something like, have you eaten vitamin D or vitamin B rich fruits or vegetables in the last 24 hours? And quite often people don't know. They don't know what type of vitamins an individual type of fruit or vegetable has. So it does require that level of understanding to be able to answer the question accurately. So that's an example of where you can improve the survey by changing the language that you're using. So I've got this little video for you here. There were 38 questions in this survey and 89 multiple choice options, and 332 people answered the survey, which gave potential for almost 30,000 individual pieces of data. And this is what it all looked like when it came through in an Excel download. So what you're probably all thinking is, how on earth do I turn that into something useful? So what we did was visualized it in Excel. So what that means is turning all that scary, overwhelming data into something that can be understood. So we turned that data into 89 pivot tables, which is what you can see in the bottom left here, and pivot graphs on the bottom right, and 18 master tables, which are an amalgamation of multiple pivot tables. And we used Excel because it is the most familiar, widely available tool. Other options could be something like Tableau or Power BI. However, because they do require subscriptions that are typically less accessible, we tend to use Excel, particularly when we're working with other national societies who might not have a subscription to anything like that. So we also put in some features such as the slicer tool you can see here on the left. And we use the slicer tool in this example to filter by chiefdom, which is different areas of East Swatini. So you could click on one of them and it would then filter all the data so that you're just seeing the answers for the people that lived in that particular chieftain. We also had that available for gender and education level. So in addition to using the entire slicer, you could also use individual filters just on individual questions. Here's an example of how this could be useful to inform program decision making. The question here is about if the person knows the benefits of iodine for their diet. So you can see that in the region in the top left here, there's a greater understanding in the green area of the benefits compared to Lucchini in the bottom right, where there is a lesser understanding of the benefit. So that might be a place that you then decide to target your intervention. We also calculated something called infant and young child feeding metrics. So there were 3 metrics that we wanted to be able to calculate, but unfortunately we weren't able to do them all. There were a couple where we couldn't calculate them because a key food group had been accidentally omitted from the survey when it was transferred from the Word document to the Kobo form. And then we couldn't calculate this bottom one because it depended on the above 2. The top one, minimum meal frequency, that means how many children have eaten enough meals per day. So if you've got 100 children, what percentage of them have had enough meals per day? We could sort of calculate that because it does depend on, firstly, if they are a breastfed child or a non-breastfed child, and secondly, their age. So you can see the red line here. We calculated that 69% of non-breastfed children were getting enough feeds per day because they need at least 4. However, for non-breastfed children, whether they need 2 or 3 a day depends on their age. And because we didn't have the breakdown of their age to that extent, we only knew that they were within this category of 6 to 23. So we weren't able to calculate exactly. However, we could create an average, and the overall metric for all of the 300 children that were in this survey is that 71% of them were getting enough feeds per day. So the outcomes, this data was reviewed and presented in a report to inform project planning and monitoring. And it also was used to create tailored health messaging, such as the poster that you can see on the right that was made by the Eswatini Red Cross. And then those posters and other targeted health information can then be distributed either according to location, where you know a particular area has a lesser understanding and needs an intervention, or it could be for a particular audience. For example, you could aim it at older people, younger people, men, women, children, and so on. Yeah, so that's the end there. We do also have Lydia on the call, who works for the, she's the regional officer for Eastern and Southern Africa. So she's here as well if anyone wants to have any thoughts or questions. Thank you. See some stuff in the chat.
I've got a quick one. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. It was really clear and really great to see how kind of the data analysis has gone on to kind of create those posters, etc. For yourself and maybe Lydia more so, how have the communities like reacted to the posters, or do you have any knowledge of how, if anything has gone on in any of those communities based on gathering that data and insight and then kind of creating that as posters, etc.?
We're still very we're still very early on in actually having the posters developed. So yeah, they haven't been up long enough for us to really analyze that. But we did get we had a baseline for this project. So we did go around, we also have this data that we can use around awareness that we will be going back to in a few, maybe about a year or so's time, and doing another analysis of the awareness that's happening. And actually some of this data has now been shared with the Eswatini Red Cross, has clinics in 2 other areas in Swaziland. So they've been sharing the data and the posters as well, and yeah, so it's been quite useful to share around. But hopefully we'll be able to have some more hard data on how well the posters, and it's not the only intervention we're using. We're going to hopefully do awareness campaigns in person when things open up a bit more, and other bits and pieces. So hopefully in a year's time maybe I can come back and tell you some good news.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. It's really helpful to have you here, and you've got more context of what's going on with the outcomes on this piece. See, Adam's put something in the chat as well. Presumably the tools of choice are driven by access and skills in the country. Yes, absolutely. Something that we always try to do where possible is work with, if there's an open source tool, we would always choose that. Or in the case of something like Excel, it's not open source, you do have to pay for it, but it is so widely available that we wouldn't want to use a tool that then isn't actually useful for the national society in another country. We would always try and choose whatever works best for them and is most accessible. Cool. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks very much, everyone, and thanks to all our presenters. There was some really, really fascinating stuff shared there. So thanks very much, and we'll hopefully see most of you again in a couple of weeks for the next show and tell. Thanks.